only show that's 3 dimensions away from poor things being called Frankenhooker. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Poor Things, released in 2024. Poor Things is a movie directed by Yorgos Lanthimos and is written by Tony McNamara, based on the book by Poor Things by Alessandro Gray, and movie stars Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, Rami Yurasov, Christopher Abbott, Jared Carmichael, and William Dafoe. The movie's essentially about a woman who dies, and then a scientist, played by Willem Dafoe, finds her, and then basically takes the brain. She's a pregnant woman who dies, and so he takes the brain out of the baby of the pregnant woman who's already dead, and then puts it into the woman to give her birth again. And so, since she died, drowned, and her brain is dead, but yet, so he puts the baby's brain in her, and then basically the woman becomes a full-grown woman. Again, basically, it starts out as a baby in a woman's body, and then basically as months go by, she starts progressing into a woman again, basically becoming a real human being. So essentially, and so the movie, I have heard people complain that there's a lot of sex in the movie, so people are like, well, she's maturing and aging, so it's basically like mentality of a child. So is this wrong that she's going around having sex with lots of people? There is a lot of sexual nudity in this movie. Like Emma Stone is like, yeah, she has a lot of sex in this movie. And I will say, if you can get past that, the movie has a great story. Like the movie is essentially about, Willem Dafoe creates this woman. He basically turns this like dead woman, the pregnant dead woman, into alive again. She basically takes the dead baby and the woman and makes it into one, and basically the person. And there is some like messed up stuff like like there is some stuff that happens and it's crazy. Like I will say, I think Emma Stone, who just won the Academy Award for Best Actress for this movie, did a perfect job, because you're basically seeing somebody like Rain Man, but like they're becoming like normalizing them. Like basically like they start out where it's like a child's brain, and then it matures into an adult's brain. And I like that, because you see Emma Stone like as a toddler, like she's just going into like this Willem Dafoe's character, who she calls God. She goes in his like character and starts stabbing the eyeballs out of a dead person, and just stuff like that, like ooh. And then of course, then she like she eats her food, and she like a toddler. And then eventually she discovers masturbation and stuff, and then she starts doing that in like, and then of course they have to stop. Like she has a maid that keeps her in line to stop it, and then of course, as like time goes on, she starts getting like in this like Willem Dafoe has an assistant, who played by Ramsey Yurasov, who basically is like walking around like taking notes on her, because at first he thought she was mentally challenged, but he actually says the R word. And so basically like but it turns out no, he explains the whole situation to her, and he basically studies her like a lab rat, where he's like, oh, this is interesting. And as she's maturing and come out, start to speak words and everything else, and it's really interesting. And of course, he said, well, when she becomes a mature brain, you will marry her. And then of course, as you marry her, you will basically, that will be, like you'll, because I don't want you will stay here in the mansion and never leave again. And he's like, okay, because he's starting to fall in love with her in a way. And basically, but then of course, Mark Ruffalo, who was a swindler, and he comes into the picture and pretends to like be a marriage license guy, and basically he like tries to pretend like he shows Emma Stone now on top of the roof, saying we could explore this whole world, and then he tricks her into basically like, hey, she's gonna go on vacation. So then when she matures up to where she can know all this information, she tells him, oh, I'm going to marry you, but I'm going on vacation. And so basically he's like, no, I'll kick his ass. And then of course she drugs him, and then she drugs Willem Dafoe, but Willem Dafoe kind of sticks money in her pocket, and then of course whenever like he pretends to be drugged, and then she goes off Mark Ruffalo, and they have lots of sex. Like that's the first thing they do, and then afterwards, and you see everything. Just saying. And like they go, and then of course he's literally like basically wants her to be fine etiquette and stuff. Doesn't realize like she's not normal, and so basically like she just wants to like dance, and they have like this dumb dance sequence where she's like just having like just dancing weirdly and everything, and because it's like it's really weird. And the best way I can describe this movie is it is basically a Wes Anderson movie with David Lynch all over this, like Twin Peaks David Lynch. Like that's the only way I can describe this movie, because there are weird shots and everything. Like the cinematography feels like something Wes Anderson would do, but then like the weird stuff in it feels something like David Lynch, not even Tim Burton, but David Lynch. And like I mean, I'm just saying the best way I can describe it is Eraserhead, you know, meets like the Grand Budapest Hotel. That's the best way I can describe this movie. I mean, like this is like literally, it's insane. I mean, like I mean, this is a great film though. Like I like Emma Stone. You see her character go through an arc. Like she starts out as like as a child. Then you see her go to a woman. By the time like she gets back to God, she basically is a grown woman, and it's really interesting because I mean I really enjoyed this movie. I mean, Mark Ruffalo is so good as a swindler. Like he tries to trick her, and at one point, like because he literally, and then of course, like because he just wants to use her, manipulate her, and then of course, whenever she sleeps with someone else, he gets angry and puts her on a ship where basically he'll have full control over her, and she gets mad about it. So then she meets these other people. One of them played by Jared Carmichael and this older woman, and they basically teach her about the world and stuff. And so she finds out that there's slavery and everything, and she's upset and people are dying. And he tells her like, look, if we go down there, if they were in our shoes, he says, they would do the same to us. Like he says, if we go down there, they're going to rape and murder us and rob us. But if so like so basically, she basically steals all Mark Ruffalo. Sorry, I keep saying Wahlberg. It's Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo's money. Steals all of his money and then goes and gives it and tells this the boat people, "Can you go give this to him?" And they're like, "Sure." And then they keep. And so then and then he's thinking Mark Ruffalo thinks somebody robbed him, and basically he is like so angry and everything. He's just angry, and then they find out like they can't afford nothing. So basically, like they have to kick him off the ship. It's really fun. There's also a lot of fun stuff that happens. I love like there's a sequence of like Mark Ruffalo does not want anyone messing with her, so like he tries to fight everyone at the ballroom. Just tries to fight them and keep them away. Like one person's like, "Can we have this dance?" And he jumps on the guy's back and she goes there kicking the shit out of him, which is so funny. It's like a really funny scene. That's really funny, and I also like how like they're in and also like he gets drunk and he goes, "This old lady's putting ideas in your head. I'm gonna throw her out overboard." And Jericho, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm gonna push her over." And he goes, "It's fine." And he goes, "Oh, well, then by all means." And then he tries the security, beats the shit out of Mark Ruffalo. And just try to pull her overboard, and just like that. But then finally, the last straw was when they're like, "Oh, they have no money to pay for their ship staying." So then they tell him they're gonna drop him at the last stock, and then they drop him in Paris, and then he's like freezing. He goes, "It's you." He's angry at her. So she said, "I will get us a job and money." And then so she walks into a brothel and gets a job where she has sex with some man. And then she goes, "I have money, see," and she buys her a Claire. And then he goes, also he says, "I don't think this is working out anymore. I'm gonna send you home now." And then so basically he calls her a whore, and then she takes her money, and then he leaves, and then she basically goes and like just becomes like she goes and like does a brothel for a while, and then basically she gets lots of money and she starts studying, becoming a doctor and everything. It's not like she's just doing this for frivolously. She's actually improving her situation. Like this kind of compares to like sort of certain women that become strippers in college so that way they could pay their tuition, or there's certain women that like I did OnlyFans so that way I could afford this and this, or there's people that say I did the adult film industry so I could better my life by spending money, and I could buy things like I could buy a house, I could buy a car, I could buy I could put up money so that way I'll never have to work again, or I could go or I could pay for a college, a bachelor's or something. There's like multiple different reasons, and I think this kind of explains the reason. Like, okay, she's not just doing this because she's like a prostitute, but at the same time she does love and having sex, but she's not doing this just to be frivolous with it, like just like. And I think that's what's important about it. It's really a female, like feminism. It's really really female empowering because the story is not just showing you like, yeah, there's a lot of gratuitous stuff in it, but it's like at the same time it's actually in her. Like she just like when she even they go the gentlemen come to the brothel, she says, "I'm not just there to have sex. I want you to actually entertain me." So she tries to play a game with the guy, like 5 questions, make me laugh, and then of course so she'll play a card game, and then one guy even moves like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and she ties it like, "Oh no, help!" And stuff like that, or just like all kind of weird stuff in that sequence. And there's also this one woman who is good friends with her, and they go to watch. Like she misses like the William Dafoe's character God, and basically she misses him. So basically she basically watches like a science lesson in Paris. Then eventually she ends up becoming like where she is like self-aware. So she goes to visit Will Dafoe, who's become ill because he's dying. And then of course they also did this to another woman who she's dumb as a pile of bricks. Like they throw a ball and hits her in the face, and she's like, and they're like, this is just not working with her. And then of course like and so, it's but it turns out he's actually cares for her like a daughter, like cares for Bella Baxter as a daughter. Like look, and I think really that she is a great character. And then of course you find out like the reason why she committed suicide in the movie because she has a husband called the General, who is like a piece of shit bastard who is like abusive and everything. And this woman said she'd rather die than live another hour under his roof. So basically, like when she's getting married to Ramsey, she's like when she has a Remy Yusuf's character, he's like, baby, come home. So she wants to find out why she did this. So she goes and she sees everything, and the guy locks her away, and she's not allowed to leave. And then so basically, she like literally pulls a gun and shoots him in the chest, and it's so freaking crazy. Like she shoots him, he pulls a gun out on her, and then she says, "I'm gonna kill you if you leave." And she tells him everything, like, "Oh, I'm dead. I'm actually your child," and all this stuff. And then he doesn't blink. She's just nuts, and he said, "I'm gonna go have your clitoris cut off," and that's what we're going to the doctor right now. And she goes, "No, you're not. I'm not going." And then so finally he pulls a gun on her side. "You're gonna die then." And then she ends up they get into a tussle. And he shoots his foot, pass out. Then he goes and brings her back to Willem Dafoe, and she, as Willem Dafoe dies, hugs him. And then they put like the head of a goat in his body and save him. And he's just a goat at the end. And she's getting to become a scientist just like him, and to honor his memory. And I think that and I think that's really cool that now the girl that they did this to is starting to become smarter now. And I think it really works as a movie. It really feels like this is a compelling story about love, about betrayal, about also Mark Ruffalo apparently goes into a sane asylum because he's trying to explain this whole situation, I guess, and he becomes obsessed with her and he won't leave her alone, so they just throw him into asylum. Then he apparently goes and finds her ex-husband and tells him everything, and so apparently that's the last we see. And I mean, it's crazy. It's a great film, but yeah, it is so crazy. It's out there. I mean, this movie is so good, though. I highly recommend it if you haven't watched it yet. And I know I just told the whole film, but it's just so engaging. Like, this is a fantastic movie. The only thing I would say I did not like about it is I felt like we could have trimmed down some of the nudity in the movie. I was like, we don't need every single nudity. Like, we could cut, like, if you cut most of the nudity out this movie, it's about 30 minutes long. And I feel like I would have cut at least like 20 minutes of nudity out of the movie because I'm like, we don't need that, I would focus on more storytelling about the other girl too. Talk about that. Also talk about the General. Let's him come into the picture earlier. But I mean, I think the movie's really well done. I really enjoyed this movie. I could see why it's got all these Oscar nominations, Oscar wins. I could see that. This is a fantastic, perfect movie. If I had to give this movie a grade, I will give it a solid A minus.
Oh.